I am going to do something that I have never done before on That Storytelling podcast. I'm sharing an interview with another entrepreneur so that you can hear her business story. It's so important to hear stories of entrepreneurs that you can relate to, not the people who are running $100 million businesses. You want to hear from the people who are doing the thing that you need to do next in order to achieve your dream life. I want to bring in as many entrepreneurs as possible so that you can hear their story and be inspired by their path. So you're going to meet my friend, Vicki Abelson, who is an incredible executive career coach. She works with top tier women. I'm talking CEOs, women on their way to the C-suite, and she helps them craft their careers in a way that feels really aligned and sustainable for them. She had a long career in healthcare administration. She actually knew from a young age that she was going to work in healthcare administration, which is an incredible amount of clarity to have at a young age. And after a certain amount of time, she realized that coaching other women was her zone of genius. She eventually left that job to create her own business, The Defined Leader, where she helps women reach their true potential and build their dream lives. One of the reasons that I love this conversation so much is that we talked about all of this invisible work that happens behind the scenes in so many different industries. Vicki was working in a doctor's office to handle all of that administrative work so that the doctor could do his job well. And I related to this so much. In most of my film career, I worked behind the director or behind the main producer, handling all of the administrative work to make sure that the film operated smoothly, that everybody was safe, that there was insurance, all of those things that happen behind the scenes that you never think about as you're watching a film in a movie theater. You're going to hear us talk about how important it is to show people that there are career paths that they're probably not even aware of. Maybe you have a love of administrative work and you've always wanted to be a doctor, but you feel like it's too late. A healthcare administration job could be perfect for you, and you've never even considered that that might be a path that you want to take. And that's why these kinds of conversations are so helpful and so important. They can open up new doors in your mind that you never knew were there. In the film industry, I learned so many skills that I bring into my business today. One of them is this deep belief that I do what I say I'm going to do. I developed this over a decade of working in the film industry where I would constantly solve problems behind the scenes. I would be the one getting the call from the director late at night saying, "Hey, can you find out if we're allowed to film on the Toronto subway system tomorrow at 8 a.m.? And by the way, if you don't figure it out, we're probably going to miss an entire day of filming and the entire story is probably going to fall apart." After solving those kinds of problems repeatedly day after day, I developed this very strong belief that I am somebody who can figure things out. So when I want to do something new in my business, like interview somebody for the first time, I bring all of that experience with me and all of that positive self-expectancy that I know how to figure it out. Doing an interview on my podcast is new for me. I have obviously interviewed people on camera before. I've even edited interviews for documentaries. So theoretically, I knew that I had all of the pieces to put this together and do it myself. But this is the first time that I've been responsible for conducting the interview while on camera, filming it myself, doing the audio myself, and editing it afterwards. And it's not easy. I was blown away by how many little details I need to think about for next time. So you're going to see that my eye line in this video is not correct. I'm looking down at my computer rather than up at the camera because I realized as soon as we started filming that my camera was not in the correct place if I wanted to look into Vicki's eyes as we were talking. And I made the decision in the first 30 seconds of the interview to focus on Vicki because I needed to be able to listen deeply so that I could ask good questions and create the highest quality interview for you to listen to. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is because I want you to know that progress is more important than perfection. Done is better than perfect. And I want you to not only hear it, but also see me living it in real life. This podcast is called That Storytelling Podcast because I am giving you the full story behind my business. business. As I try new things, I want to be really open and honest about the things that I struggled with, the things that I wish I could have done better, not only so that you can learn them as well, but also so that you can see what it looks like for an entrepreneur who's just starting out to figure it out as they go. If you're listening to this a year from now, or 5 years from now, or oh my gosh, 10 years from now, I hope that you can see a clear path to how I've built my business. I have no idea where it's going to be at any of those times, but I hope that you're inspired by watching me grow in real time. This is how you tell a story in your business. You document your process. You show people what you're learning along the way as you're learning it, because you never know how it's going to help somebody now or in the future. I've gone into the backlog of so many of my favorite entrepreneurs and podcasters to pick up those little nuggets of wisdom when they were where I am right now. And I am always so grateful that they took the time to share their story as they were going through it. And it has led me to work with some of those same entrepreneurs because I know that they have the exact experience that I'm looking for in my own business. And if they hadn't taken the time to share that story 5 years ago when they were really going through it, I wouldn't have known that they had the same experience that I'm having now, and I probably wouldn't have ended up working with them. I don't want this to distract from the interview that I've done with Vicki, because what she talks about is so valuable, especially for anybody who's dreaming of starting a coaching practice. Vicki is an incredible example of building step by step, adding skill upon skill to create a really solid business that she can be proud of. Vicki is the definition of professionalism. You can tell immediately when you meet her that she has deep roots in professional development, and she has done the work. She brings all of that experience into this interview. So if you have questions about the direction of your career, or becoming a career coach, or just going out on your own and leaving your 9 to 5, this episode is going to provide so much insight. So get cozy, put in your headphones, go for a walk, and let's dive into this amazing conversation. Vicki Abelson, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so excited to be here.
I know that my audience is going to be so excited to hear about all of your rich experience in executive coaching and the incredible business that you have built. If you don't mind, I'm just going to dive right in with my first question. What made you so excited about healthcare administration? How did you know that from such a young age?
I think I was in college at the time. I was working with a physician who was doing surgeries for little kids, doing tonsillectomies and adenoidectomies, TNAs. And a little boy came in with his dad to have a TNA. This boy was clearly in pain. The dad took time off of work to have this procedure. And somebody somewhere, and I don't know where or when, messed up, didn't get a pre-cert. We were fortunately able to pretty quickly shift and pivot and get this little boy the procedure that he needed. But it became really, really apparent to me in that moment that the people on the back end of healthcare, the people that you rarely see, how much they impact the quality of care you have, the access to care you have, the experience you have, not just the physicians, not just the nurses, but all the people in the back end who really impact your ability to get care. This is one of the reasons I really became a coach. You want your physicians to be focused on care. You want your physicians to know nothing about the back end, because you want them to be solely focused on helping you stay well and get well. And so I really wanted to be sort of, to quote unquote, be the man behind the man and helping the physicians do their work best. And that's what I do as a coach too. My job as a coach is to help you shine, to help you do your work best.
Okay, I love this so much because there's so many jobs out there that people don't know exist, and they don't know how important they are.
Right.
And as a result, they don't know that their dream job, that thing that could really light them up and play on all of their best skills, is out there. It reminds me of my film career because I was trying to be the
Mhm.
filmmaker, the creative person, the director for so long, and it was burning me out to be really creative. And I loved spreadsheets and paperwork and the business side of things. But
Mhm.
I thought that I had to be the creative person to be in the film industry. And one day I worked at this job on a documentary, my boss was doing all the budgeting and the cost reports and the insurance and all of that stuff behind the scenes that keeps people safe and allows the director to focus on their job and just go into the field and shoot. I was like, I need to know more about this. So I went back to school and I studied under her for an entire year during COVID. And then I got my like big break really in the film industry was working under the man, under the big producer who was making all the films in Toronto. What I really want people to hear in this is that just because you're in an industry, maybe you're in healthcare, maybe you're in film, maybe you're in accounting, there might be something else in there. If you just scratch below the surface or you talk to somebody, you're like, that whole world opens up.
One thing you just said is really important that I just want to highlight for a second is that sometimes we tend to think like whatever the career trajectory is what the career trajectory is. Like as one door opens, we walk through it. Another door opens, we walk through it. And we just kind of go on this path. But really, there's so many roads, but sometimes you can't see it because the only thing you see is the road in front of you. And you've been conditioned to just walk on the path in front of you. If you go back to school days, like first grade, second grade, third grade, you just know to go forward. It takes somebody else external of you to be able to look at you, to look at the experience, look at the situation and say, hey, you know what? Yes, there is this road and it's lovely, but have you ever thought about this road? And this road might be a better fit for you. And let me help you get here. Let me tell you about this. And that being able to see sort of that 10,000 foot view is so important.
So you did take a completely different path. Can you tell me a little bit about when you started to feel like the role that you were in, that you thought was the right role for you since you were young, started to feel like maybe it wasn't right? What happened there?
In 2015, my daughter was born. And when I came back from maternity leave, I sort of had this distinct feeling of like, I've been out for, 14 weeks and like nothing has changed. Like we're still answering the same questions. We're still solving the same problems. I don't know how I feel about this. And in 2018, my son was born and the same thing happened. And I was like, okay, this is a sign. Like this something is not right. And I will say like those couple of years were really amazing. I got a promotion. My team got promoted. We hit incredible revenue goals. It was an amazing time professionally, but I just was feeling like, I think something is off. And then when I started learning about coaching, I did what every sort of high achieving, high performing woman does. I reached out to everybody that I know that was a coach and I did informational interviews and I was like, tell me about your life. And I ended up hiring one of them who helped me kind of see like maybe this is a path that I wanted to do. My initial goal was to actually create a coaching and development program within the organization I was working for. And at the same time, I was getting my coaching certification. And through my coaching certification, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to go out on my own. And so I made a plan. It took me about a year and a half to like fully pull the trigger, but I did it. And it's been almost 4 years now that I've been full time and I don't regret it in any single way whatsoever.
Amazing. Okay, I definitely want to hear about that year. What was that year like for you? How are you balancing this new thing and this old thing and being a mom?
My husband and I made a plan. I wanted to have a certain amount of savings so that I felt comfortable leaving. And we came up with that target number, and that's what we worked towards. We saved my salary towards having that number in the bank so that I felt comfortable leaving because it was really important to me that when I left, for any business decision to not be made out of fear. I didn't want to pull the plug on my business because I was nervous about our financials. I also started seeing clients I remember I sent out my first email like, hey, I'm open for business in 2019.
Awesome.
Even before I finished getting my coaching certification. And I started getting my first clients and I started getting results for people and I started getting more comfortable in coaching. My daughter was 5, my son was 2. And so, lots more hands-on, lots more attention needed from me. I was working all of the time because I had my 9 to 5, I had my kids, I had my clients, I had 2 or 3 clients at a time. I really loved it. And it really showed me that this was important to me and that I could do this work.
The fact that your realizations came around having kids really stands out to me. I think these changes happen around having kids often for women. And we can be at the height of our career when it happens. We often think like, oh, I'm going to work up, up, up. I'm going to hit this point, this pinnacle of my career. And then I'm going to have kids and I'll be safe up there. Like nothing can touch me once I'm up there, and so I'll be safe to have kids, and I see so many women pivoting at that exact point, and that's exactly what happened to me. Do you see that in your clients as well?
Yeah, so I think absolutely the kids thing absolutely impacts how we see ourselves and what we value from a career perspective. The other phase that I see that is really important that a lot of my clients, and I know I personally hit that too, is like around that time when you hit 40, all of a sudden you've hit like so many career milestones and your kids are maybe a little bit older, a little bit more self-sufficient. And all of a sudden you kind of look back and you're like, what do I want for my next decade? And do I want it to be more of the same? And oftentimes the answer is no. And so if that answer is no, then what do I do with that? Once you know that like something isn't right, you can't unknow it.
No.
And it like festers and it grows. But like it is so helpful to have somebody help you like tease that out of like, if it's not this, then what is?
I just before this call saw this video where Alex Hormozy was saying that being an entrepreneur is like running a marathon where you're not fit enough for the marathon. You're not trained enough and you're becoming fit enough as you're running the race and you don't know where the finish line is, or maybe there just is no race, you're just running. You keep running the race because once you start it and you see what it's like, you
Yeah,
can never go back.
you can never go
And I
back.
was like, 100%. There's still a little voice in the back of my head that's like, what if one day this stops working and you have to go back? There's a part of me that's like, it's okay. We'll figure it out and we'll get ourselves back here somehow. Because now I know that it's possible. Once you feel that something's wrong, there's no going back. And then once you go to the other side, there's no going back.
I still, to this day, recruiters will call me for various positions, doing what I used to do within organizations, and then actually now doing coaching and development within organizations. And every once in a while, I have a conversation, and then I sort of stop and think. And my husband reminds me too. It's like, do I really want to? Do I want to give this up? And like when I say this, like the good and the bad of it, right? Because entrepreneurship sounds glamorous sometimes, and it can be, but it's also hard there because exactly what you said. Like there's no path, there's no rules, there's no guidebook, there's nothing like do this, and then you're going to be successful. We're all just figuring it out. We're running the marathon when we're not quite fit enough yet for the marathon.
Totally. Do you ever have a little feeling of grief when someone asks you to come back and you have to say no? Because I have had that, and
Yeah.
I was asked to basically be the CFO of a film company that I respect so much, and they called me and we had this big conversation, and I had to say I'm doing my own thing and I can't. But I had this feeling of like a little breakup again, almost like that ex comes back to you and they're like, let's try it again. Like we've done this before and I love you so much, but you're just not the right person for me. And like that day where you're like, oh, did I do the right thing? Should I just give it a try? And then, a day goes by and
I do sometimes experience a sense of like FOMO. I'll be doing training and development within an organization. I'll actually go to an office. I'm like, oh gosh, like it'd be so nice to be in this like really fancy office, like with break rooms and conference rooms. I have this like visual in my head of like what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be this like high powered woman in a suit with a notebook, click clacking down the hallway. And I was that for so many years. And then I'm not that now, right? And I have something very different. But when I see that again, I'm like, oh, I kind of miss that. Like, so I do get that sense of like FOMO a little bit.
it definitely feels like a loss of what could have been, And when you see that woman in the suit, I had the exact same vision for myself. And you see her, you're like, like, I gave up the vision, but for something else, something so much better, what little pieces of insight could you share for anybody who's just about to embark on that journey?
I very quickly realized there was a big difference between coaching and running a business. And I thought I was leaving my job in order to coach. I didn't know, which was so naive of me, but I didn't know that I was leaving to start a business because I was leaving to coach. Bridging that gap and understanding that there's two different things was honestly the hardest thing for me in that first year because I knew how to coach. And I have an MBA and I worked in organizations for a really long time, 15, 20 years. But that's different than running your own business and having to learn all of those skills and getting my mindset right to the fact that I had to learn those skills. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to coach was probably one of the hardest things for me in that first year.
What are some of the skills that you've had to learn, and how did you go about acquiring them?
Oh my gosh, literally all of them. So, things like marketing, sales, setting up tech, payment systems and Zoom, literally everything, because all I knew how to do was get on a call and have a powerful coaching conversation. And I should also say, learning how to be a business owner while also working from home and figuring out all of that was
Yeah.
also really new and challenging, and it took some time to figure out that balance.
How did you move from having a reliable salary that you had been building up to for years and years to all of a sudden making your own money and having to provide for your family?
That's a great question. So, my goal was very much at first to replace my salary, because I knew that that's, what paid for my children's school and, sort of life and all mortgage and all of the things. And so that was my goal.
Mm.
And I worked to that very consistently through word of mouth. Most of my clients, even to this day, come through word of mouth. It probably would have been faster if I had let go of some of my fear of doing some of the marketing things, of doing some of the sales things, and of really learning how to do those things well. That probably could have happened faster. But
Mhm.
now that I know I can set up my days in such a way that I can really focus on Vicki, the business leader, versus Vicki, the coach.
That's so helpful for people to hear. It's almost like a salary transparency to me. It's like, can we talk about how long it took us to actually replace our salary? Because there's so much information out there that's like, you should be making millions of dollars in your sleep and it should be easy and passive. And if it's not, you're bad at business. And this is the reality. This is what it naturally looks like to build a business. So thank you so much for sharing that.
That replacing your salary number, I think, is a good number to aim for, especially when you're starting out. Like you need something, and that's a good one to go for. But one
Mhm.
thing that I've been doing lately that I almost wish I had done originally was thinking about not replacing the salary, but how much do I want to make? Because for some
Yeah.
people, that could actually be less, or it could be more. And so to
Mhm.
make sure that you're aiming towards the right target.
Absolutely. One thing that strikes me about what you just said is how you didn't mention coming up with your own framework to coach. It sounds like you were
Mm.
very clear on how you wanted to help people. So, can you tell me a little bit about how you achieved that clarity? Did that just come through your certification, or were you creating your own framework as you were helping people?
Oh my gosh, I have such strong feelings about this concept of frameworks. So I think I mentioned that I worked with a coach when I was still working full time to kind of help me get to this idea. And she really pushed me on what my framework was in helping people. And I, for the life of me, did not know what she was talking about. I was like, I just have a conversation with them and I help them figure this out. But she pushed me so hard on creating that framework. And that pressure, honestly, and I say this with all due respect to her because I think she's an incredible coach otherwise, it held me back more than it pushed me forward. The fear of like the perfectionism of like having this framework held me working full time for my corporate role longer than maybe if I felt confident enough to just go out and say, I don't need a framework. I do have a framework now, but it's a very loose framework. And it's a framework that came after working with clients for 5 years. I have over 1,000 coaching hours now under my belt in that time. And like now I can confidently say I have a framework.
The framework comes from helping people and being in connection with people. It's hard when you're just getting started because you're like, I don't know how I want to help people, but to figure that out, I have to talk to people. But to talk to people, I have to know what I'm selling them. And so it starts really with getting into conversation with people and starting to help. And then it works out.
100%. Because, there's like obviously a massive $1 billion industry on professional development books and personal development books. That's all framework based, right? And that's wonderful and that's great. But you're going to read the book and like, does that actually help you become a different person? And the
Mhm.
answer is 9.5 times out of 10, it doesn't. And so frameworks in and of
Mhm.
themselves, I think they're important, but I don't know that they're sufficient or necessary.
So now that you have this framework, you have this toolbox of business skills. How does your business look now? What does success mean to you now? How are you growing right now?
I'm still, every single day I'm working out on figuring out messaging, on figuring out how do I connect with my person in the best way. I'm constantly thinking about how do I, to your point, like how do I tell my story or tell the story of my clients in such a way that helps people to understand the importance of investing in themselves, the importance of taking the time to really focus on what they want instead of what society wants for them, what their spouses want for them, what their bosses want for them, etc. I want to continue building out my mastermind. The women in the
Mm.
group are so amazing. I get to sometimes see the conversations that they're having independently of me and like the way that they're supporting each other and thinking about each other. And they work in such different industries and do such different things. And yet still they're able to help each other. Because like one thing that I have found, and I'm sure so many of your listeners have experienced this too, is that when you get to a certain level in your career, you don't really have coworkers. You can't really like ask anybody for help or advice. And so having this group of people that really just want you to succeed is so incredibly powerful. Nothing feels better than that, of like knowing that you have a group of women that have got your back, that will help you, that will challenge you, that will support you, that will remind you what an incredible person you are. Like nothing is more powerful than that.
Yeah, it's the one thing that has made my business possible this year. I know that for sure. But speaking of rooms, did you sell out a conference this year?
I did. I had a conference in November. Gosh, it feels so long ago now. I held a conference in November. It was called the Confident Career Conference. I talk a lot about confidence in my work, and it was
Amazing.
amazing. It was amazing.
Okay, please tell me more about how you had the courage to do a live event and how you got it off the ground. How did you fill the room?
I don't know. So I've been thinking about it for a long time, and then I just decided to do it. I was like, what do I have to lose? Like literally nothing. Booked a co-working space, and I was like, let's fill this room. And I started telling
Mm.
literally everybody I know and their mothers about it. I, did all of the word of mouth. I ran ads. Like I just did all of the things that I've learned over the years how to do, and I did them all completely imperfectly. The best sort of compliment that I received from the conference was one of my clients. She was so funny because she was like, I saw some of your emails and they had typos and like there were things, and you still did it and you still showed up confidently. And it was just like such a good
Mhm.
reminder for me that it doesn't have to be perfect and that's okay. The perfectionist part of me was like, where were the typos?
Yeah,
Like,
I would too.
tell me what I did wrong. But I was
Yeah.
like yes, I am leading by example. I'm leading my clients by example. I'm leading my children by example by showing them that I could do big scary things and I can show up and I can do it in perfect and it's still going to turn out amazing.
You're leading yourself by example,
A
which
hundred
is
percent.
the most valuable thing that you can do. It's like, oh, yeah, when I say I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to do it.
Confidence doesn't mean being right all the time or being perfect all the time. Confidence means being
Mhm.
human and showing up anyway. Just
Yes.
being a regular person and doing the thing anyway, scary as it is, doing it anyway.
Did it change your business? Like, have you seen results from doing a live event like that?
It didn't change my business. I did get like a couple of clients that like signed up with me afterwards. I don't want to say this because this sounds like very dramatic. And I like one of my cornerstone beliefs is I actually don't believe in transformation. But I do think it changed me in the sense of like exactly what you said. Of like I helped to prove to myself that I can do the hard and scary thing. And that if I can do this, I can do so many other things also. And then that's just going to give me the courage to keep doing bigger and better things in this year.
Okay, tell me about this cornerstone belief that you don't believe in transformation.
I don't believe in transformation. In the coaching space, we talk a lot about transformation and like we're expected to talk about transformation. My problem with that word is that it sort of sends you the message that there's something wrong with you and that you need to somehow change. I fundamentally disagree with that idea. I do not believe that there's anything wrong with you because you would not be where you are today. You would not have the career you have, the business you have, the friends you have, the health you have if there was something wrong with you. My job is not to transform you from like a caterpillar into a butterfly. I already believe that you're the butterfly. My job is to
Mhm.
help you either fly further or have your wings be a little bit brighter.
I've never heard that perspective before, and it makes so much sense. I can hear people in my audience saying, "Okay, but I do feel like a caterpillar." What would you say to them?
I think we all feel that way of like, I don't know, like I don't know what I'm doing. And I
Mhm.
feel like a caterpillar right now. And that's totally normal. And if you do feel
Mhm.
like that, that's okay. Let's figure out how to reframe that thought so that you can actually see the truth of the situation.
It's helpful for me actually because I've done so much, and when I think of the metaphor of caterpillar to butterfly, I always identify with the caterpillar. Like, am I never going to be the butterfly? Whereas
That's the problem. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's the problem. And like when I see you and like I've had the pleasure of like knowing you for a few months now, like I
Mhm.
see you as like such a bright butterfly. And yes, you work with
Mm.
coaches, but you work with coaches not to transform you. You're working with coaches to help you fly further and to help you fly there faster, not to change who you are. Maybe your wings are getting brighter, maybe your wings are getting better, whatever it is. But I personally do not see you as a caterpillar in any way. You are very much a very bright butterfly. And I will send you messages about that every single day if I need to.
Clearly such a talented coach. I mean, I knew that before this conversation, just from meeting you in the rooms that we've been in together physically. Your presence is so grounding and clear and confident. Like, if you tell me something is true, I'm like, that's true. Like, there's no questioning it for me. I have a question that I love to ask. Is there anything that you wish people asked you about?
It's a good question. The question that I wish, maybe not that they ask me so much, but like they ask themselves maybe more
Mhm.
so is why should I invest in myself now? Why is now the time? And that answer for me is always because the cost of not doing it is just too great. I got an email from somebody who wanted to work with me last year. When we had the conversation at the time, she was like, I can see how you could help me. I think I'm actually going to try and figure this out on my own. I think I can do this on my own. And I was like, okay, that's wonderful. Like, I wish you so much luck. And I sincerely hope that it works out. And she emailed me yesterday and she's
Mhm.
like, hey, can we have another conversation? I tried and I just didn't get that far. I'm like, of course, I'm happy to help you.
Mhm.
When clients realize, oof, I wish I had taken a chance on myself earlier. Oof, I wish I had invested in myself earlier. It breaks my heart a little bit.
Do you know what makes me the most nauseous? I had this amazing therapist. She was so expensive. It was like $260 an hour, and she was giving me her lowest rate of $160 an hour so that I could afford her. She helped me so much, and as soon as I felt better, I was like, "I'm outta here." She said something along the lines of, like, "You will be in a completely different place in 5 years if you stay in therapy." I was like, 5 years? Like, I couldn't imagine paying that amount of money, and if I had been in therapy that entire time, this was probably 2014, 13, 10 years. If I had stayed in for 10, 12 years, I would be a multimillionaire by
Oh
now.
my
I
gosh. Oh,
know that
yes, many times over.
many times over. The cost of not doing it was I can't even wrap my mind around it. So it's like
Oh my gosh.
non-negotiable for me now.
Yes. I have a client. She's one of my original clients, and I still work with her once a month. She had a goal to sell her company 15 years from when we first started working together. She's going to sell her company 10 years earlier than she thought possible. People use coaches as the ER sometimes. I have an urgent need. I need a new job. I'm having a really hard conversation with my boss, whatever it is. And so they call coaches because they're in crisis. And that's wonderful. And I'm so happy to help you when you're feeling that way. What if you used a coach to help you stay well instead of get better when you're sick? How
Yes.
powerful would that be? And how much further along would you be in revenue and happiness and confidence and all of those things?
The cost of not doing it is everything. Speaking of the essentials, how can people work with you, find you? What do you have coming up?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram as well. I have a podcast called the Back Pocket Coach Podcast because I firmly believe that you should have a coach in your back pocket who can help you work through challenging situations if and when they arise. It's like usually 10 to 15 minutes you can pop in your headphones while you're taking a walk or, sitting in carpool as we do sometimes. And I'm happy to chat with any of your listeners at any time about coaching, about business, about any of the things.
Thank you so much. I know that my audience is going to get a ton of insight from this conversation. And I know there's a lot of aspiring coaches out there who want to do exactly what you've done. So thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart for being here and for sharing your business story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I hope that it was inspiring to hear another entrepreneur's business story. Like I said in the introduction, I want to bring in as many entrepreneurs as possible to tell their business story in a way that is relatable and understandable to the everyday person. I love hearing stories of entrepreneurs who have built seven-figure, multi-seven-figure, billion-dollar businesses. Those interviews are so inspiring and interesting, but they don't provide the breadcrumbs that we need for the beginning of our journey to really get started. When I was dreaming about starting my own business, I was always looking for those little tidbits of information about the very, very early days. As you heard from Vicki's interview, it is absolutely possible to build a beautiful coaching business that is aligned with your life, that brings you so much fulfillment and enjoyment, and replaces your salary and then some. I'm going to bring you entrepreneurs from so many different industries, from photography to virtual assistants to nutrition coaching. I'm going to bring in all of these amazing entrepreneurs building beautiful, thriving businesses around their lives and around their stories. If you loved this episode and found it valuable, please help to spread the word by leaving a 5-star review on Spotify or by subscribing on YouTube. And don't forget to hit the little bell icon so that you never miss an episode. Regardless of where you're watching or listening, I would love to hear from you. Please comment below and let me know which part of this episode stood out to you and what you want to hear more of from future entrepreneurs. If you want to see more of my life behind the scenes of my business, go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll see you next Friday.